Jake Morrison stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his dress uniform for the 10th time. His hands were shaking. In just 3 hours, he would marry someone he had never met. Someone who wasn't even human. The whole thing had started 2 weeks ago when Admiral Coleman called him into her office. Jake was just a regular diplomat, the kind who usually handled trade disputes and visa applications. He never expected to hear the words that would change his life forever. "Morrison, Earth needs you," the Admiral had said. "The Vorthak Empire controls half the galaxy's fuel reserves. Without their alliance, humanity won't survive the next century." Jake had nodded, expecting to be sent on some negotiation mission. What came next shocked him to his core. "Their crown princess has requested a marriage alliance. You've been selected as the most compatible candidate from our diplomatic corps." Compatible? Jake had almost laughed. How could any human be compatible with a Vorthak? Everyone knew what they looked like. 7 feet tall, covered in gray skin that looked like old leather, 4 arms that moved independently, those compound eyes that reflected light like a broken mirror. But he couldn't say no. 3 billion humans lived on colony worlds that depended on Vorthak fuel routes. His personal feelings didn't matter when so many lives hung in the balance. Now, standing in the preparation chamber of the Grand Alliance Hall, Jake tried to calm his racing heart. His best friend Danny burst through the door, carrying a glass of water. "You look like you're about to pass out," Danny said, forcing the glass into Jake's hand. "I feel like it too," Jake admitted, taking a sip. "What am I doing, Danny? Marrying someone I've never even spoken to? Someone who probably sees me as some kind of primitive creature?" Danny placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're saving humanity. That's what you're doing. Besides, maybe she's nice? You can't judge someone just by their appearance." Jake wanted to believe that, but every photo he'd seen of Vorthak warriors and diplomats made his stomach turn. It wasn't their fault they looked terrifying to human eyes. But millions of years of evolution had programmed humans to fear certain shapes and features. The Vorthak had them all. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Ambassador Helen Park entered, her face professionally calm but her eyes showing sympathy. "It's time, Jake. The princess has arrived." The walk to the ceremony hall felt like a dream. Jake's feet moved automatically while his mind raced. The hall itself was a marvel of compromise, decorated with both earth flowers and Vorthak crystal formations. Hundreds of guests from both species filled the seats, creating a strange mixture of familiar and alien faces. At the altar stood a figure draped in traditional Vorthak ceremonial armor and veils. Princess Zara was completely covered from head to toe, only her height giving away her identity. Jake was grateful for the veils. At least he wouldn't have to look directly at her during the ceremony. The officiator, a neutral species called the Meridians, began the ceremony in 3 languages. Jake barely heard the words. He was too focused on the figure beside him. Even through the heavy armor, he could sense her presence. She stood perfectly still, like a statue. When it came time for the vows, Jake was surprised to hear Princess Zara's voice for the first time. It was deeper than a human woman's, but had a musical quality that wasn't unpleasant. She spoke the marriage pledges in accented but clear English. "I, Zara of House Theron, take you, Jake Morrison of Earth, as my bonded partner. I pledge to honor the alliance between our peoples through this union." Her words were formal, diplomatic. Jake echoed similar vows, his voice steadier than he expected. There was no talk of love or affection. This was a business arrangement dressed up as a wedding. The ceremony concluded with an exchange of rings. Jake had to place his on one of her 4 hands, choosing the upper right as he'd been instructed. Her hand, covered in ceremonial gloves, was larger than his, but surprisingly gentle as she placed his ring. As they turned to face the crowd as a married couple, the assembled guests erupted in polite applause. Jake caught sight of his parents in the front row. His mother was crying, though whether from joy or sadness, he couldn't tell. His father sat stone-faced, the only sign of emotion a slight tremor in his jaw. The reception was a careful dance of diplomacy. Jake and Zara sat at the head table, not speaking to each other but playing their roles for the crowd. Various officials from both species gave speeches about unity and cooperation. The food was separated into human and Vorthak sections, as neither species could digest the other's cuisine. Throughout it all, Jake stole glances at his new wife. The veils and armor made it impossible to see anything of her true form. But he noticed small things, the way she tilted her head when listening to someone speak, how her upper arms moved differently from her lower ones, the upper set more graceful and controlled. As the evening wore on, Jake found himself growing curious about the person hidden beneath all that ceremonial dress. Who was Princess Zara really? What did she think of all this? Was she as reluctant as he was? Or had she volunteered for this marriage? Finally, as the reception drew to a close, Ambassador Park approached their table. "Your transport to your private quarters is ready," she said quietly. "The honeymoon suite has been prepared according to both species' requirements." Jake's heart began racing again. The ceremony was over. But now came the part he dreaded most. Being alone with his alien bride. He stood, offering his arm to Zara, as he'd been taught. She took it with one of her upper arms, and together, they walked toward their new life. As they left the hall, Jake heard someone whisper, "Poor boy, marrying one of those creatures." But for the first time that day, Jake felt a spark of indignation. Zara had been nothing but gracious throughout the ceremony. Whatever she looked like under those veils, she was now his wife, and Jake Morrison always stood by his commitments, no matter how strange they might be. The honeymoon suite was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Half of it was designed for human comfort, with familiar furniture and warm lighting. The other half accommodated Vorthak needs, with higher ceilings and different air pressure controls. A clear line divided the two sections, like two different worlds forced together. Jake stood awkwardly near the human side while Zara remained by the door. They hadn't spoken a word during the transport ride here. Now, in the quiet of their private space, the silence felt heavy. "I'll sleep on my side," Jake offered, gesturing to the human section. "You can have your area. We don't have to. I mean, we can just keep this professional." Zara moved further into the room, her ceremonial armor making soft clicking sounds with each step. "You are afraid of me," she said. It wasn't a question. Jake wanted to deny it, but honesty seemed better. "I'm not afraid, just nervous. This is all very new. For both of us," Zara replied. She walked to the large window overlooking the city. Earth's moon hung bright in the sky. "Your people find us hideous. I know this. The diplomats tried to hide it. But we are not blind." The sadness in her voice caught Jake off guard. He had been so focused on his own discomfort that he hadn't considered how she might feel. "May I remove this armor?" Zara asked suddenly. "It is very heavy, and I have worn it for many hours." Jake's pulse quickened. "Of course. It's your room, too." Zara turned away from him and began unfastening the complex clasps of her ceremonial outfit. Jake respectfully looked away, focusing on unpacking his small bag of belongings. He heard pieces of armor being carefully placed on the floor. "There is something I must tell you," Zara's voice came from behind him, clearer now, without the ceremonial helmet muffling it. "I am not what my people consider beautiful. That is why I was chosen for this marriage." Jake frowned, still keeping his back turned. "What do you mean?" "Among the Vorthak, I am defective, a genetic anomaly. My family was happy to send me away through this alliance. They see it as solving two problems at once." The bitterness in her tone made Jake's heart ache. He understood that feeling of being unwanted, of not fitting in. Slowly, he turned around. What he saw made him freeze in shock. Zara stood by the window, now wearing a simple robe. But she wasn't the monstrous creature he had expected. Her skin wasn't mottled gray, but instead had a soft, pearl-like shimmer. Her forearms were proportioned gracefully, moving with an almost dance-like fluidity. Her face, while different from human features, had a delicate quality to it. Instead of compound eyes, she had two large eyes that sparkled with an inner light. She was beautiful. Not human, but undeniably beautiful. I don't understand," Jake stammered. Zara's shoulders sagged. Please don't mock me. I know how hideous I must appear to your kind as well. No, Jake said quickly, taking a step forward. That's not what I meant. You're not hideous at all. You're lovely. Zara's eyes widened in surprise. You jest. My own people can barely look at me. I lack the proper rough skin texture. My eyes are malformed. My arms too thin. I am everything a Vorthok should not be. Jake's mind raced as understanding dawned. Wait. Your people consider rough, gray skin attractive, and compound eyes? Of course. Those are signs of strength and genetic fitness. Zara studied his face. You truly do not find me repulsive. The opposite, Jake admitted, feeling his cheeks warm. On Earth, we have different beauty standards. Smooth skin, graceful movements, expressive eyes. These are things humans find attractive. They stared at each other for a long moment, processing this revelation. Then, unexpectedly, Zara laughed. It was a musical sound, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. How strange the universe is, she said. My greatest shame is that I look too much like your species' ideal. And you were dreading marriage to a monster, only to find. She gestured at herself. Jake found himself laughing too. The absurdity of the situation, the relief, the surprise of it all, came out in shared laughter. He walked closer to her, no longer afraid. Your family sent you away because they thought you were ugly? He asked. Not just ugly. Unmarriageable. No Vorthak would have me. When Earth requested an alliance through marriage, my father saw an opportunity. Send the defective daughter to the primitive humans. Either the alliance holds and I'm no longer their problem, or it fails and they have an excuse to break the treaty. That's terrible, Jake said, genuine anger rising in his chest. Using you like a political pawn. Zara tilted her head, studying him. Are you not also a pawn? Why did they choose you, Jake Morrison? Jake sat down on a nearby chair, suddenly tired. I tested highest for adaptability and cultural sensitivity. Plus, I had no significant family connections that would complicate things if the marriage failed. I was expendable. Two unwanted souls, bound together by other people's ambitions. Zara mused. She moved to sit across from him. Her movements graceful despite having 4 arms. Perhaps that is not the worst foundation for a partnership. You're right, Jake agreed. We both know what it's like to be considered less than ideal. Maybe we can make something real out of this arrangement. Zara extended one of her upper hands toward him. I would like that. To start again, properly this time, I am Zara, and I enjoy studying ancient poetry, growing crystal gardens, and watching your Earth storms from orbit. Jake took her hand, surprised by its warmth. I'm Jake. I like old movies, cooking experimental fusion cuisine, and I've always dreamed of seeing other worlds. Well, Zara said with a smile that transformed her face, I can certainly help with that last one. They talked for hours that night, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Jake learned that Zara had spent years studying human culture in preparation for possibly meeting humans one day. She had never imagined it would be through marriage. I watched all of your classic films, she admitted. The romantic ones confused me the most. Humans seem to fall in love so quickly and dramatically. Real love isn't like the movies, Jake said. It's slower, built on understanding and respect. Is that what you hope for us? Love? Zara asked softly. Jake considered the question. I hope for partnership first. Understanding. Maybe friendship. If love comes later. He smiled. Well, stranger things have happened. I'm sitting here having the best conversation of my life with an alien princess who my entire species expected me to fear. And I'm discovering that the primitive human I was sacrificed to is actually kind and thoughtful, Zara replied. My tutors were wrong about your species. As the night grew late, they prepared for sleep in their separate areas. But the wall between them no longer felt like a barrier. It was just a temporary boundary between two people, beginning to understand each other. "Jake?" Zara called softly from her side of the suite. "Yes? Thank you. For seeing me. Not just what you expected to see." Jake smiled in the darkness. "Thank you for the same." As he drifted off to sleep, Jake realized that the first night of his arranged marriage had indeed changed everything. Just not in the way anyone had expected. He had come here dreading a monster and found instead someone who might become a true partner. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. The next morning, Jake woke to find Zara already up, tending to a small crystal formation she had brought from her homeworld. The crystals hummed softly as she touched them with her lower arms, while preparing tea with her upper ones. "Good morning," she said without turning around. "I hope you like botanical tea. It's the only thing both our species can safely consume." Jake stretched and joined her by the window. "Smells interesting. What are those crystals?" "My garden," Zara explained, her eyes lighting up. "On Vorthak, we grow crystals like you grow plants. Each one resonates at a different frequency. Together they create harmony." She handed him a cup of the pale blue tea. It tasted like mint mixed with something floral. As they stood together watching the sunrise, Jake felt surprisingly comfortable. "I've been thinking," Jake said. "We should probably learn more about each other's cultures. Real knowledge. Not just what our governments told us." Zara nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. There is so much I want to show you. And perhaps," she hesitated, "perhaps you could teach me to cook? I've always been fascinated by how humans combine flavors." That afternoon, they started their cultural exchange in the suite's kitchen. Jake showed Zara how to make simple pasta, laughing as she tried to coordinate all four arms to stir, season, and plate simultaneously. "It's harder than combat training," she complained good-naturedly as sauce splattered on her robe. "You're doing great," Jake encouraged. "Most humans can barely cook with two hands." As they ate the slightly overcooked pasta, Zara shared stories of her childhood on Vorthak. "I spent most of my time in the libraries. Other younglings avoided me because of my appearance. But the old keeper, he was kind. He taught me to read ancient texts, even the forbidden ones." "Forbidden?" Jake asked, intrigued. Zara leaned in conspiratorially. "Texts from before the Great Change, when Vorthak looked different. More like me, actually. The government claims they're myths, but the keeper believed they were history." Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Mornings were for Zara's crystal gardens and meditation. Jake would join her, finding the harmonic frequencies surprisingly calming. Afternoons, Zara taught him Vorthak martial arts. "Your species relies too much on upper body strength," she observed, easily dodging his attempts to grapple. "Watch how I use all four arms in sequence. It's about flow, not force." Jake tumbled to the mat for the 10th time, laughing. "Easy for you to say. You have twice as many arms." "Excuses," Zara teased, helping him up. Again, evenings were Jake's favorite. They would cook together, experimenting with fusion dishes that both species could enjoy. Zara had an amazing palate, able to detect subtle flavors Jake missed. One night, as they prepared dinner, Danny called via video link. "Jake, how's married life treating you?" His friend's cheerful face filled the screen. Then his eyes widened as Zara appeared beside Jake. "Oh, hello. You must be Princess Zara." "Just Zara," she corrected warmly. "You're Danny? Jake has told me so much about you." Danny's mouth hung open. Jake could practically see his friend's brain short-circuiting as he processed Zara's appearance. You're beautiful," Danny blurted out, then immediately turned red. I'm sorry. I just expected. Someone hideous?" Zara supplied with amusement. "It's all right." Jake had the same reaction. They chatted for an hour, Danny peppering Zara with questions about space travel and alien technology. By the end, he was completely charmed. "Mate, you hit the jackpot," Danny whispered when Zara stepped away to get something. She's amazing. Yeah, Jake agreed, watching Zara demonstrate a holographic projection system to show Danny her homeworld. She really is. But not everything was smooth sailing. A week into their marriage, Jake discovered something troubling. He had been reviewing the treaty documents when he noticed discrepancies in the translation. Zara, look at this, he called her over. The Vorthak version has different terms than the human one. These resource allocation percentages don't match. Zara studied the documents, her expression growing darker. This is wrong. The Vorthak version heavily favors my people. It would essentially make Earth colonies dependent on Vorthak generosity. Did you know about this? Jake asked carefully. No. Zara's eyes flashed with anger. This has my uncle's manipulation all over it. He's always been against the alliance. She turned to Jake, taking his hands in two of hers. You believe me, don't you? I would never be part of deceiving you. Looking into her luminous eyes, Jake found he did believe her completely. We need to figure out who else knows about this. If hardliners on either side discover the deception, it could destroy everything. Zara finished. Not just the alliance, but any trust between our species. They spent the night going through every document they could access, finding more hidden contradictions. It was clear someone on the Vorthak Council had deliberately sabotaged the treaty, hoping it would fail when the deceptions were discovered. They're counting on us not working together, Jake realized. They assume we'd be too uncomfortable with each other to actually compare notes. Then they miscalculated, Zara said firmly. We'll expose this together. As dawn broke, they had compiled a complete list of the treaty's deceptions. Jake was exhausted but impressed by Zara's sharp mind and dedication to truth. You could have benefited from these terms, he pointed out. Your people would have gained significant advantages. Zara shook her head. Built on lies? No. My people have a saying. A crystal grown in false light will always be flawed. I won't be part of building a flawed alliance. They were interrupted by an urgent message. Ambassador Park's worried face appeared on screen. Jake, we have a problem. Someone leaked information about Princess Zara's appearance to both Earth and Vorthak media. The reactions are complicated. Some Vorthak hardliners are calling for the marriage to be annulled, saying she's not a true representative of their species. Jake felt anger surge through him. That's ridiculous. Zara is... It's all right, Zara interrupted, placing a calming hand on his shoulder. I expected this. My family has probably been waiting for an excuse. She straightened, every inch the princess, despite her fears. But they forgot something. This marriage is legally binding by both our laws. They cannot annul it without my consent, which I do not give. Ambassador Park looked relieved. The human response has actually been quite positive. Photos of you both have gone viral. People are calling it a fairy tale romance. Jake groaned. The last thing they needed was media attention. But Zara squeezed his hand. Perhaps we can use this, she suggested. If the public on both sides supports us, it makes it harder for the hardliners to move against the alliance. After the call ended, Jake pulled Zara into a hug. She stiffened in surprise, then relaxed, wrapping all four arms around him. Thank you for standing up for us, he murmured. Us, she repeated softly. As they stood there, holding each other while the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, Jake realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a political alliance anymore. Somewhere between cooking lessons and martial arts, between shared laughter and late-night conspiracy uncovering, they had become partners in truth. The treaty deceptions were still a massive problem. Political forces on both sides would try to tear them apart. But Jake looked at Zara. Brilliant, kind, brave Zara. And knew they would face it together. Ready to save the galaxy? He asked with a grin. She grinned back, her whole face lighting up. With you? Always. The leaked photos changed everything overnight. Jake woke to find hundreds of messages on his communication device. Some were supportive, others cruel, but one stood out, a warning from an unknown sender. Stop digging, or face the consequences. Zara, look at this. Jake showed her the message. She was practicing her morning crystal meditation, but her concentration broke immediately. "They're getting nervous," she said. "Good. It means we're close to something important." That afternoon, they were summoned to an emergency meeting at the Alliance Hall. Jake noticed how people stared as they walked through the corridors. Some humans smiled and waved, while Vorthok diplomats turned away in disgust. In the conference room, they faced a mixed council of human and Vorthak officials. General Krax, a massive Vorthak with traditional rough gray skin and compound eyes, dominated the room. "This union is a mockery," Krax growled, his forearms gesturing aggressively. "That creature is not a true Vorthak. She brings shame to our species." Jake started to stand, but Zara placed a gentle hand on his arm, keeping him seated. She rose gracefully instead. "General Krax," she said calmly, "I may not meet your aesthetic standards, but I am the legal representative of the Vorthak Empire in this alliance. More importantly, my husband and I have discovered serious issues with the treaty that should concern everyone here." "Lies to distract from your deformity," Krax spat. "Really?" Jake couldn't stay quiet anymore. He activated the holographic display, showing the treaty discrepancies. "Then explain why the resource allocations are different in each version. Explain why someone secretly added clauses that would cripple Earth's colonies." The room erupted in chaos. Human officials demanded answers while some Vorthak representatives looked genuinely shocked. Krax's compound eyes glittered dangerously. Admiral Coleman called for order. "These are serious allegations. We need a full investigation." "Investigation?" Krax laughed harshly. "This is clearly fabrication by these two misfits trying to justify their unnatural union." "Then you won't mind if we review your department's communication logs?" Zara suggested sweetly. "Since you oversee treaty translations?" Krax's gray skin darkened, a sign of Vorthak anger. "You dare accuse me?" "I dare seek truth," Zara replied. "Unless you have something to hide?" The meeting ended without resolution, but Jake could see doubt spreading among the council members. As they left, a young Vorthok aide approached them nervously. "Princess," she whispered, "I have information about the treaty. But not here. Tonight, at the old observatory." That evening, Jake and Zara debated whether to go. "It could be a trap," Jake worried. "Krax's supporters might be trying to eliminate us. Or it could be the proof we need," Zara countered. "I know that aide. Lita has worked in the translation department for years. She's never been political before." They decided to take the risk but prepared carefully. Jake wore a protective vest under his clothes, while Zara carried a small defensive weapon her people used. As they entered the abandoned observatory, every shadow seemed threatening. Lita waited inside, all four of her arms trembling. "I'm sorry for the secrecy, but Krax has spies everywhere." She pulled out a data pad. "These are the original treaty documents. Krax altered them after both governments approved the terms. He plans to reveal the human deception after a year, using it as an excuse to break the alliance and seize Earth's colonies." "But why?" Jake asked. "What does he gain?" "Power," Zara answered grimly. "If the alliance fails, he becomes a hero to the isolationists. He could challenge my father for leadership." Leta nodded. "There's more. He's not working alone. Someone in Earth's government is helping him." Before she could say more, the doors burst open. Krax entered with several Vorthak guards, their weapons drawn. "I knew the little mutant would come running," Krax sneered. "And bringing her pet human. How touching." Jake stepped protectively in front of Zara, but she moved beside him instead. "We stand together," she whispered. "Leta, you disappoint me," Krax continued. "But you'll disappear like the others who questioned me. As for these two, a tragic accident. The princess and her husband, killed by anti-alliance extremists. So sad." "Oh, Tree, you're forgetting something," Jake said, his hand moving to his pocket. "I sent a live feed of this entire conversation to Admiral Coleman. Earth security is already on their way." Krax's compound eyes widened. "You lie." "Do I?" Jake held up his device, showing the active transmission. Your confession is being broadcast to both governments right now. It was a bluff. Jake had only started recording when Krax entered. But the general didn't know that. In his rage, Krax had revealed everything. Kill them, Krax ordered, but his guards hesitated. Killing in cold blood was different from following questionable orders. In that moment of hesitation, Zara moved. Jake had seen her practice martial arts, but watching her in real combat was breathtaking. She flowed like water, using all 4 arms to disarm the nearest guard while dodging energy blasts. Jake grabbed Letta, pulling her behind cover as the fight erupted. He managed to trip one guard who was flanking Zara, giving her time to disable him. Human security forces, stand down! Admiral Coleman's voice boomed from outside. Krax made one last desperate move, lunging at Jake with his ceremonial blade. Time seemed to slow as Jake saw the weapon coming for his chest. Then Zara was there, deflecting the strike with 2 arms while the other 2 struck pressure points that dropped Krax to his knees. It's over, General, she said sadly. Your hatred has poisoned you. As security forces flooded in, arresting Krax and his conspirators, Jake realized his hands were shaking. Zara noticed and took them in hers. Are you injured? She asked anxiously. No, I'm fine. That was just... He searched for words. You saved my life. You saved mine first, she reminded him. With your quick thinking about the recording, we make a good team. Admiral Coleman approached them. That was incredibly brave. Both of you. Lita has agreed to testify about everything. We'll need to root out Krax's allies on both sides, but you've saved the Alliance. As they returned home, Jake noticed Zara was quiet. What's wrong? Krax was right about one thing, she said softly. I am a mutant, a genetic throwback. Maybe our children would be amazing, Jake interrupted firmly. Just like their mother. When I see you, I don't see a mutant or an anomaly. I see the bravest, most beautiful person I've ever met, human or Vorthok. She stopped walking, staring at him. You think about children? Our children? Jake felt his face heat. Maybe. I mean, if that's even possible. I just meant hypothetically. Zara silenced him by pressing a gentle kiss to his cheek. I think about it too, she admitted. A future where human and Vorthak children grow up as friends. Where being different isn't shameful but celebrated. That's a future worth fighting for, Jake agreed. The next day brought a media storm. The story of their investigation and the fight at the observatory had leaked, but instead of focusing on the conspiracy, many outlets fixated on the romantic angle. The human and alien, who risked everything for each other and their people. They're calling us the galaxy's sweethearts, Jake groaned, reading the headlines. Zara laughed. There are worse things to be called. Besides, if it helps people accept the Alliance, I'll endure it. A message arrived from Zara's father, the Vorthak Emperor. Jake expected anger, but the old ruler's words surprised them both. My daughter, you have brought more honor to our house than any traditional match could have. Your human shows courage worthy of a Vorthak warrior. The conspiracy you uncovered has led to arrests on multiple worlds. You have my blessing and my pride. He's never said anything like that to me before, Zara whispered, tears in her eyes. Jake held her as she processed years of rejection finally giving way to acceptance. They had survived political plots and assassination attempts. They had exposed corruption and saved the Alliance. But in that moment, the greatest victory was the healing of an old wound in Zara's heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were still those on both sides who opposed their union and the Alliance. But tonight, they were simply Jake and Zara. Partners, friends, and something more that grew stronger every day. 6 months later, Jake stood before the Joint Council presenting plans for something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Beside him, Zara operated the holographic display. Their movements synchronized from months of working together. The Haven Colony, Jake announced, showing images of a green planet orbiting a distant star. A place where humans and Vorthak can live together. not as separate species tolerating each other, but as one community. The council room buzzed with whispers. Some faces showed excitement, others skepticism. Jake had expected this reaction. My wife and I have proven that our species can do more than coexist, he continued. We can thrive together. Haven will be the model for future integration. Arnau. Who would go to such a place? Asked Councillor Rodriguez. Humans fear the Vorthok, and the Vorthok. Well, we've seen how they treat those who are different. Zara stepped forward. Those who feel like outcasts in their own societies, humans who dream of the stars. Vorthak who value progress over tradition. We already have 3,000 volunteers from both species. She showed testimonials from potential colonists. A human engineer who'd always felt limited by Earth technology. A Vorthak artist whose work was rejected for being too unconventional. Families of mixed heritage who faced prejudice on both worlds. This is beautiful in theory, Admiral Coleman said carefully. But practically speaking, how do you manage different atmospheric needs, food requirements, cultural expectations? Jake smiled. This was the question they'd been waiting for. We've spent months developing solutions. The colony will have adaptive zones that can adjust atmosphere composition. We've created fusion cuisines that both species can enjoy. As for culture, he looked at Zara with warmth. We're creating something new. Taking the best from both worlds. The presentation continued for hours. They showed architectural designs that blended human comfort with Vorthak functionality. Education systems that taught both species history without bias. Government structures based on merit and mutual respect rather than species origin. When they finished, the council voted. It was close. Many still harbored doubts. But the memory of Krax's betrayal and how Jake and Zara had saved the Alliance tipped the scales. Haven Colony was approved. That night, they celebrated in their favorite restaurant, a small place that had started serving fusion dishes inspired by their cooking experiments. The owner, an elderly human woman named Rosa, had become like family to them. To Haven, Rosa toasted, raising her glass of the botanical tea she'd learned to love. And to the couple, who proved love conquers fear. We couldn't have done it without support from people like you, Zara said warmly. You were one of the first to welcome me as just Zara, not the alien princess. As they walked home under the stars, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The suite that had once been divided in two was now truly unified. With their belongings mixed naturally throughout, Zara's crystal garden grew alongside Jake's herb plants. Their books shared shelves. Their lives had woven together seamlessly. Nervous about the colony? Zara asked, noticing his thoughtful mood. Excited, Jake corrected. We're building something no one's ever tried before. A place where being different is normal. They were interrupted by a call from Danny, who appeared on Jake's device with a huge grin. Guess what? Lisa and I are volunteering for Haven. She's fascinated by Vorthak medical techniques, and I figure the colony needs someone to set up proper communication systems. Jake felt a surge of happiness. His best friend would be joining their adventure. That's amazing. But are you sure? It won't be easy at first. Mate, you married an alien princess and exposed a galactic conspiracy. I think I can handle colony life, Danny laughed. Besides, Lisa's pregnant. We want our kid to grow up in a place where human and Vorthak are just words, not divisions. After the call, Zara was quiet. Jake knew that expression. She was thinking deeply about something. Danny's news about the baby. She began hesitantly. I've been researching. Our species can have children together. The genetic markers are surprisingly compatible. Jake's heart skipped. They'd avoided this topic, assuming it was impossible. Really? But how? Remember those ancient texts I mentioned? The ones about Vorthak looking different before? Zara's eyes sparkled with excitement. I think humans and Vorthak share common ancestors. We're not as alien to each other as we believed. She showed him her research, genetic sequences, archaeological evidence, stellar migration patterns. It painted a picture of two branches of the same tree, separated by millions of years but still fundamentally connected. That's why you look more human-like, Jake breathed. You're not a mutant. You're a bridge between our species. We're the bridge, Zara corrected, taking his hands. Together. 3 months before departure to Haven, they stood before both their families. Jake's parents had flown in from Earth's European district. Zara's father had made his first journey to Earth, accompanied by her siblings, who still seemed uncomfortable with her appearance but were trying to understand. A year ago, I thought I was losing my son to political necessity, Jake's mother said, tears in her eyes. Instead, I gained a daughter who makes him happier than I've ever seen him. Zara's father, the Emperor, stood stiffly in his ceremonial robes, but when he spoke, his voice was warm. The old ways teach that strength comes from purity. But watching you both, I see that true strength comes from unity and diversity. You honor both our peoples. The farewell ceremony was broadcast across both worlds. Jake and Zara stood before thousands. No longer the nervous couple from their wedding day, but confident partners ready to lead. Haven isn't just a colony, Jake addressed the crowd. It's a promise that fear doesn't have to divide us. That love can build bridges between stars. Zara added, We go not as humans or Vorthak, but as people seeking a better future. Some call us idealistic. Others say we're naive. But every great change started with someone willing to try. As their ship prepared for departure, they stood in the observation deck watching Earth shrink behind them. Hundreds of other vessels joined them. The first wave of colonists heading to their new home. No regrets? Zara asked, slipping her hand into his. Jake thought about the comfortable diplomatic life he'd left behind, the safety of the familiar, the ease of staying among his own kind. Then he looked at his wife, brilliant, brave Zara, who had transformed his world, and smiled. Only one, he said, that it took an arranged marriage for me to find you. She laughed, that musical sound he'd grown to love. The universe works in mysterious ways. Leda, now their colony's head administrator, approached with a data pad. We'll reach Haven in 6 weeks. The terraform crews report everything is on schedule. Your home is being prepared in the central district, with room for expansion. Room for expansion. Jake caught Zara's eye and saw his own hopes reflected there. Children who would grow up, never knowing that human and Vorthak were supposed to be incompatible. A generation born among the stars, citizens of the galaxy rather than single worlds. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Jake pulled Zara close. They'd started as strangers forced together by politics. They'd become partners through shared danger. Now they were pioneers, leading their people toward a future nobody had dared imagine. Think our story will make it into the history books? Jake asked. Zara smiled. Perhaps. But I prefer making history to reading about it. The stars streaked past as two species flew together toward tomorrow. In the lead ship, Jake Morrison and Princess Zara of Vorthok held each other and planned for a colony where love wasn't limited by the shape of one's body or the number of one's arms. Haven awaited. And with it, proof that sometimes the universe's greatest gifts come from its most unexpected arrangements. Their forced marriage had become a love story. Their personal happiness had become hope for billions. And their journey to the stars had become humanity's next chapter in the cosmos. The ugly alien princess who wasn't ugly at all, the human diplomat who found courage in love. Together, they were writing a future where different was beautiful, where unity grew from diversity, and where the stars belonged to everyone brave enough to reach for them.